Alrighty, so yeah, welcome everyone to the Power to Fly Chat and Learn. We're so grateful to have you in this space and really super excited to be talking to Carolyn, who I just met recently. And I just want to learn from her and find out more about her thoughts on creativity and music and how they tie in together and how we can all get inspired to do our work and be better and level up in our career and our work, thinking in the lens of playing music and learning music. Um, okay. So, yeah, I am Katie Mason. I am your conversation host and facilitator. I love to engage and build really awesome virtual engagements and share this with you and share the knowledge of how we do this and also championing your next move and celebrating elevating women of color and allies. I say yes to conversations that bring us closer, and I also have a background in UX research. um, you can best connect with me on Instagram or on LinkedIn. I will put this into the chat so that you can just click on the link. And I want to welcome our guest, Carolyn Iga. We're talking about creativity, music, and bringing our whole selves. And so, yeah, Carolyn, would you like to share a bit about yourself, please?
Sure. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for taking the time out of your day to chat. My name is Carolyn Iga. I'm a fourth generation Japanese American from Hawaii. I'm the owner, as Katie said, and president of Neighborhood Music School and Store in Arcadia, California, part of the LA County, for the past 15 years. I'm a pianist, songwriter, instructor, marathon runner, former bodybuilder, if you believe it, vegetarian, animal lover, a person of faith. I'm a seminary graduate, a pastor, and a missionary. I learned Chinese in my 40s and spent a lot of time in China building up the people there and building up communities, starting a couple of clothing stores there that support the orphans in the area. And I'm a collaborator on healing poverty, animal rights, and global sustainability.
Great, thank you so much. And just to go over the platform itself, there is the chat area, and there's a general chat that you can write to everyone, and then there's a Q&A, which I've started to post some of the questions that we prepared to walk through in our time together, and so you can go and upvote those if you would like. And this is, we're being recorded, and we will send you the rewatch link later. And please follow Power to Fly and the YouTube channel. And today we are talking about stepping into creativity, music to reach our potential and honoring our whole selves. We're going to ask you to share with us the wins, the gains from personal enrichment activities, and also like, how can music inform and unlock ways of thinking and problem solving. And I am going to stop sharing so that we can talk with each other. And the first question really is, Carolyn, what do you love most about your current career path? And do you feel like you've aligned your career with your passion?
In my younger years, I worked on church staffs a lot. And while I felt very strongly about the work I did there, it was just exhausting. And I would always feel under the pressure of the people I worked for, which is a formula for a passionless life or a life of burnout. But working in a team environment where there's a high demand for social skills and conflict resolution gave me the maturity I needed to be able to start and succeed in building a team with my business. So When working for other people, I always felt compartmentalized, like you're just playing a role, like the youth director, or the music director, or staff development. But when I came into my own as an entrepreneur, some long unused gifts and talents started to come into play everywhere. You just have to be all things to all people as an entrepreneur. And so that's when I really started to have the freedom to identify my passions and begin to roll with them. So yes, I at this point I do feel aligned with my passions.
Great. Yeah, we want to hear more about, how you got into your journey of building and expanding the music school. Can you tell us more about that path?
Yeah, growing and expanding the music school, it truly took the 15 years of being in business. Had to learn one lesson at a time, and I've made the mistake of like not marketing or not networking once we came into a comfortable level of business and knowing we were going to make it. I made the mistake of switching software without preparing my team, and something I did numerous times, creating many disasters. I've made the mistake of not understanding my own financials. I made the mistake of not running my own social media. But what I realized and came to find out is that the human mind and the spirit is really an amazing thing that has, I mean, we have immense capacity to grow and stretch. And if you're in it for the long haul, and you have to think of it that way, as you're in it for a long haul, you can keep in mind that you have a long time to learn things. It's not like you're in school, you have a semester or 4 years even. And so I would tell myself that you have all the time in the world, so stop being a victim of your business and learn it right. So that's the attitude that really helped me to gradually conquer my challenges and continue to grow the business.
Great. And let's go towards the creativity part of it. And, for someone looking to improve their creativity, what do they need to do and consider?
Yeah, I wanted to really delve into this element of creativity because I ended up doing a lot of thinking on this. This was the topic that you and I talked about, Katie, coming into this interview. And I wanted to share this to you all as food for thought. Um, I would start by just having you imagine a world with no problems. And I think for most, it would conjure up this feeling of peace or relief because we're so used to carrying around a lot of stress, even beyond your personal responsibilities. I mean, if you're like me, you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, or at least the weight of a couple other people besides yourself. However, there may be days or seasons or even your lifetime when you might actually think that such a world with no problems would be kind of boring. And that leads me to my thesis that I believe that we're meant to create or to be creative. And we find ultimate fulfillment when we are creating. So Mo Stein, he's an architect. He was the one who defined creativity as the generation of novel and useful ideas, which is a definition that stuck. And what that is saying is that creativity is about finding an extraordinary way of dealing with a problem. So I'm a person of faith, and according to the Bible, Genesis 1, God created us and the world and found tremendous fulfillment in creating, saying after every day of the creation, basically that, quote, but it was good. That's good. And the story goes that he created the human in his image with the ability to create and procreate. And in fact, he commissioned us to fill the earth by procreating. And in our daily lives, we are always meeting new challenges, some which require elementary amounts of adjustment, and some that require like immensely creative solutions. And we can safely say that there is no human on earth that faces no challenges, right? So challenges are an inherent part of life, and you and I are living, or you are living because you have creatively implemented solutions to meet and overcome your challenges. And the degree to which we feel stuck will demand that degree of breakthrough, of creative breakthrough. So as I think about my business, if we were to collectively think about the challenges facing us all recently, one of the most universal ones being the pandemic, that has taken an extraordinary amount of creativity from every one of us. And depending on your level of leadership or personal sense of responsibility, you have participated in creating at the very least on a personal scale, but some of you on a massive or corporate scale. And that's where we have creativity with a small c, which refers to a personal creativity, like a mundane daily challenge that moves you to tweak your behavior in order to meet up to the challenge. For instance, I threw out my back yesterday. How am I going to get out of bed today? Or that's not true. This is an example. Or my kids can't physically go to school because of lockdown. How am I going to manage my own work while supervising them on their online lessons? So we have those kinds of daily challenges. And then there are others who think, well, if I'm facing this challenge, I wonder how many others I can collaborate with to find solutions. And so that's a bigger scale. And that's when we start to get into creativity with a capital C. So on a global scale, like we've had to think, like, how are we going to develop a vaccine that people and get people to take it? How are we going to develop travel policies so that all of us can get through this together with minimal damage? And how are we going to get people all across the country to stay at home when everybody needs a paycheck to live? These are all situations that took tremendously creative solutions from every one of us. So we have had to develop our creativity in order to where we got today as humans. And it can be also concluded that humanity is fully capable of meeting the challenges before us. And each step when humanity has progressed past the problem has required a large measure of creativity. And if you'll stop now and think of a challenge that you faced recently and think of how you got from point A to point B. I'll just take 10 seconds for you to think of a situation.
I think well, I know we're thinking. I feel like maybe initially I just feel challenged by something, so I might get mad and frustrated. And I think all I can do is at that time just acknowledge the feelings that are coming up first, and really practicing just doing that. And then after I've cooled down, then I can maybe think more along the lines of what's the goal that I want to meet by when, and then I guess going backwards a little bit from that point. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we all have our process to getting there, to getting to that point where we can start to be creative. But yeah, to think about the kind of like the big picture of getting you got from point A, all of you got from point A to point B somewhere in your life. And that's just encouragement. Like you had to have created a solution. And, according to Mo Stein, that you created a novel and useful idea that was both innovative and utilitarian. And so if you're facing a challenge now, I just want you to remind yourself that you've had to overcome so much so far by your own creativity. So However you've gotten there, congratulations. And I wanted, I just want to lead with that because one of the things I want to sear in your minds is this, is just how essential creativity is for our survival. And that broadly speaking, creativity, it's not an option. But, like Katie, you just said, there's ways and attitudes that cause us to hobble through our challenges instead of really rise up to them. And that's why it's important to develop creativity and encourage our children to be creative. So Katie, thank you for that example. And I just want to milk that a little bit more and ask our audience to stop and think of some of the least creative ways of dealing with challenges that are almost anti-creative ways of operating.
Yeah, it's definitely because you're the expert in music. So now, I want to take us to how does music help someone think creatively? Because maybe, there are people listening in who play an instrument, or they have learned it while growing up, or have begun this new journey recently, last year maybe. So yeah, how does music in particular help someone think more creatively?
Yeah, sure. I just want to just stop and make sure I address if anybody had those negative thoughts. I wanted to close that loop a little bit and just say, there's things that we do like that are not so creative, like complaining is one of them. I just made a little list for myself: gossiping, shutting down, saying that I can't, avoidance, and then addictions by virtue of avoiding the problem. And so just before addressing the music, just to think of like the one thing I want you to consider is what is your attitude and the process that goes on in your brain and your emotions when you're faced with a challenge. Now, the way in terms of music, let me also preface my thought by just reminding us that each of us has this God-given gift of creativity. It's not like just some of us have it. Each of us have it as part of the human race. So, not only have we been given this crazy tool with our ability to creatively deal with our challenges, but I believe we're born to create. Like, it's our highest call, and we get our ultimate joy and fulfillment when we're creating. And yes, we create to find solutions to our challenges, but sometimes we create just out of the joy of creating. So it's like the call to be parents for some, to to procreate, essentially procreating a bundle of joy and new challenges. It's why the arts and beauty are so appealing to us. So we enjoy beauty, but we also enjoy creating beauty and get tremendous amount of fulfillment when we do so. And we need to remember that creativity is developed like a muscle is developed. It needs to exercise. And yes, it develops out of a necessity to meet a challenge we're faced with, but it's also a muscle that can develop when we place ourselves in recreational or artistic spaces. And I want to be clear that music, art, dance, sports, writing, architecture, math, they're all examples of creative and potentially recreational spaces, but it can also qualify as very mundane disciplines that can suck the life out of us. I remember a very prolific author, professor, talk about the dread of writing one of his uninspired books, and he had been contracted to write, write it, and he would find every excuse not to get started. Like, suddenly the desk would be unbearably dusty, and he or then he'd have to And then he'd click on the solitaire game on his computer, and before he knew it, an hour went by. And we have that proverbial parent who's telling the child they need to practice, practice first before you play outside. And so these are particularly uninspired moments in the midst of this mandated or assigned creative task. But still, it is that muscle that you put your mind to develop and you spend the time doing, sometimes uninspired session after uninspired session, in order to build that muscle or that craft, in this case music, we're talking about music, so that when that moment comes, like you hear the song in your dream and you wake up and you write it down because you know how, you've developed the skill. I personally like writing blogs when I'm traveling, and sometimes a hilariously absurd interaction would unfold, or some like a majestic scenery before me, and it'll all come forth onto the blog with this sudden flow of inspiration. It's because my parents sent me to creative writing school when I was 7, and I learned the skill of creative expression through writing. And we see, like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, or in my day, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, who were just artists and creators on the court. And we see and experience that kind of creativity when we see that. It is just awe-inspiring. But creativity comes after the mundane discipline of developing and honing the skills. So we have those one who are who do spend the time practicing the discipline, for instance, piano, who have the tools and who launch into creativity. You also can have just as easily have the skilled practitioner that gets stuck in a comfortable place where they seldom create, but usually stay in a safe, conventional, established bounds. And I talked about some lessons I had to learn in failing to expand my business. It was a sort of settling for what I assumed was enough, and this lack of creativity creeps in. So some barriers to creativity we fall into is like this sort of lack of vision or energy on the part of the learner, where one never pushes past the basics of what they're told, and sometimes it could be just like a settling, like where you feel like, okay, that's good enough. Or it could be like an entitlement, like I did all this, like that should be enough, otherwise it's just too hard, I just forget it. Or it could be like a compliance, where we're taught that obedience is better than creativity, and going against the grain will not win approval from our elders or our peers. But sometimes you can also have the teacher or the parent who never expects themselves to teach a student more than what's convenient to teach. So they teach what they already know, and they never expect themselves to keep learning. So as students or learners, we can sometimes treat learning like a checklist. And parents do this. They say, okay, send my kid to Chinese school, send my kid to piano lessons. And we get that sort of that checklist in our mind, and we treat it like, okay, I read this, finished that, and I consider it learned, done, and then judged as boring. I'm not good at it. Don't like it. So music, we need to remember the ability to creatively meet our challenges starts with attitude. And I'd almost say that the ability to create starts with an expectant attitude. And music, like other arts, languages, sports, are all skills to learn through discipline that once they're grasped, they become the bridges to creativity. But we need more than the skill itself to become creative. And the attitude of expectancy is what I hope to impart to all of my students as a teacher.
So much of what you've said, I'm like, yeah, it makes me think, okay, how it's really important to meet sort of like the criteria, and so that there's a measure of how far you've gone or what progress you've made. But then I guess, yeah, like being a teacher, it's difficult. It's a big task to teach creativity, like how to challenge the students to maybe sort of like create the guidelines and rules for a game, for like setting up some new, um, pushing the boundaries, and then like even learning the language of music, and then pushing the boundaries when they get to a certain point. So yeah, I guess we can then, I want to ask the question, um, because you had mentioned that music provides a language that brings out important ideas to be expressed. So if you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, the art of music specifically is a universal language, and you cross cultural barriers. I know it's cliche. It's very cliche. You hear it all the time, but it's so true. So I learned Chinese, and Chinese helped me to understand another culture like I never did before, and it helps me communicate to one people group. And I really appreciate that process of how that expanded my world. But with music, and the writing of music, you can communicate. You can bring emphasis, you can bring climax or tenderness or agitation on a universal level. So music is really a unique vehicle to communicate. It can be compared to a language, or in some ways to a sport where you're acquiring a skill. But when it comes together, there's really a uniqueness that music has to communicate, to express, and to bring emphasis. I think I was mentioning to you that, or I probably wrote it, that there are no ums. When you write a piece of music, you don't stop and say, "Oh, wait a minute," or you don't say, You write it in a way that it's very poignant, and when it's performed well, it is so poignant. So I think that is the uniqueness of music.
And yeah, maybe we can talk about also the improvisation. Like, are we able to apply the teachings of improv into our daily lives? And how has this expanded the horizons for your students?
Yeah, improvisation. It's interesting. It's an advanced level of music that requires a lot of musical skills that come together. A lot of musicians never learn to improvise. You have even concert pianists that never learn to improvise. So at least, I think it's probably changing these days, but it does take a degree of investment to learn to improvise. It is a skill, and all that being said though, improvisation is still a language. It's still like learning a language. Where you spend time, you're learning your vocabulary, your grammar, in the hopes that you can construct a meaningful sentence to yourself. I'm thinking more about like Chinese and learning. You hope to construct a language, a sentence that makes sense, or something that's meaningful. In musical improvisation, your study of scales, chord progressions, licks, riffs, they all help to construct a piece that communicates something. And it provides again, a baseline skill for creativity to emerge. But so improvisation itself, I don't necessarily view as creativity. It is a bridge within a bridge that brings us closer to creativity. Um, when when one can grasp the spirit of creativity, which is the attitude of expectancy with the hopes of communicating. So I boil creativity down to an attitude, basically, or at least an attitude is a big part of creativity. Then one can use the skills of improvisation to communicate. Again, creativity is the what is novel or what is the word? Let's say novel and utilitarian in terms of you're communicating. So you could take a young child, I shouldn't say young, you could take anybody who doesn't know how to play music and have them, tap on various notes. We call that improvisation loosely, but we wouldn't have a high reverence for that. It's basically, plucking a bunch of notes. But when someone takes these abstract notes and puts it together and arranges it into a poignant sentence or something that's communicated, that to me is creativity.
Gosh, yeah, I definitely want to ask about, as an adult learning music, is there a time when it's too late? What do you think about adults learning music? Any tips and advice for someone just getting into it late?
Yeah, no, absolutely never too late. So um, people, I just talked about learning Chinese in my 40s. So it's, there are these myths that once you pass a certain window of time, early childhood, it's increasingly difficult. I even asked my Chinese teacher, do you think that's true? Like, do kids learn faster? It's like, absolutely not. They're not, come on, you're an adult. You learn a lot faster than the kid. I think for us, we, we lose sort of the wow factor, I guess, or we're very quick to judge ourselves. So, you know, we're a lot harder on ourselves than kids. So that we're just going to say, you know what, I suck at this. And so, but of course, we have way more tools in our toolbox. So definitely, and I think also that we're just have so much on our minds as adults when you start to accumulate more and more responsibilities, or that we just feel that we're torn in different directions. But in terms of learning, of course, adults are better than or faster than kids learning. So I would just dispel that myth. So absolutely, start anytime.
I kind of want to, it led me to think about, because when you're learning, you're just practicing, how can you make it not like a chore, or it's where make the practice more fun, maybe? Um, any ideas there?
That's exactly creativity. So it's implementing creativity to learn what is mundane. It is mundane. Any skill, you're going to have to do it 10, 100,000 times in order to get it. And so this thing about creativity, the playing it 1,000 times will not make you creative. It will make you bored. It's tremendously mundane. So yeah, so we as a teacher or as a student, as a learner, we all need to exercise our creativity in creating more fun ways to learn that. Some things that I use with my students is creating landscapes, creating pictures, so that different parts of your brain are are talking to each other. So if we're memorizing, say, every good boy does fine, or great big house fighting animals, which is the bass clef lines, I'll say, okay, close your eyes and can great big dogs fight animals. What kind of dogs? Great, great big. How big is the dog? He's like this big. What color is he? So yeah, I'm getting them, and that's an example for an elementary lesson to cross over into the imagination. And so when the skill is developed, when I do play the scale correctly, then I want to access another part. So can you play it like you're angry, or can you play it like you're sad? And it's the same scale, but you're accessing different parts of your experience, and hopefully, hopefully it's fun, but definitely it's more interesting.
Love it. I love that. I love what you just shared. It's that you learn the notes, but then also that you're allowing the student to then show these emotions through playing the same song but in different ways. I wish I had a teacher like you. So awesome. That's beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to get to for you how music has been such a big part of your life. How has it helped you find your passion and purpose?
Um, yeah. Uh, I think music itself, again, is a tool. So music has, in itself, I don't think, had helped me to find my purpose, but it definitely was a mode of expression. And there's different things you can do within music um, to get to that passion. One is to write songs. So I guess that's probably the culmination of where a lot of people are, where we're going with music, is to write that song that expresses your heart. Um, so I think it definitely, when you do get all the tools and you do learn your basic chord structures, your basic scales, and you also develop your own sense of your own, I guess, in touchness with your personal feelings. That is really, I think, a wonderful way that all that expression and all that passion comes forth. And so I know, yeah, even to this day, I'm sure you all have experienced like a certain song or a certain, will bring that emotion. Sometimes it will bring tears. Sometimes it will bring just this surge of adrenaline, or like it's like, oh, I want to dance to this one. So yeah, I think that's how it has crossed over for me in terms of passion.
Mhm. Yeah, I I guess, yeah, I'm wondering, like, um, it is a very tough question because I feel like I love the way you explained it, that the music is like a tool and it's the language, and then it kind of like it helps you deliver and show your emotions. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's a
Great,
great, yeah.
great, awesome. Yeah, so we have someone asking, how do I incorporate my interdisciplinary studies in my professional career? So I'm thinking that this person's asking, like, how can they bring more passion into their day-to-day work?
Okay.
Um,
So assuming that the interdisciplinary has been the music background or something like it,
yeah,
or
I don't know in particular what those studies may be, but I suppose it's, this person has been able to choose to take different courses online these days, and whatever that may be. I would think maybe watercolor, maybe if this person is like particularly feel drawn to it, and this so or even for me, I went and took like a EDX course on um yeah, how to find my purpose, and or like how to be a better interviewer, just because I care about the subject.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, yeah, like how can you, maybe it's something that feels kind of really unrelated, like knitting, like how can that be brought into work, I suppose, if
Okay.
you have any thoughts on that.
Okay, yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. One is I applaud you, whoever asked the question, and you, Katie, for taking up, let's say, whatever it was, knitting, or for you interviewing, because I think at the core of why I do what I do, or in terms of our music school, it it's not so much that everybody become a musician, because that's not going to happen. You're going to have maybe 5% that end up pursuing it in college, and maybe 1% that ends up pursuing it as a career. That to me is not the point. The point is you learn how to learn, and you develop a love for learning. And so it's so important, I think, that we be beginners, continually find areas that we are beginners, because there's a certain when I talked about anti-creative mind, it's the type of mind that settles, that it's the type of mind when you're a CEO for too long, or you're a parent, I suppose, where the buck stops with you for too long, and it's a sort of syndrome where you can't it's you're always right. So it's hard to be creative when you're in that space. So there's something to be said about starting something new and continually going into another unrelated area, just for that sake of and I do believe that is probably how you find your passion. And it's not I think to some degree it might be a myth that it's suddenly like I started, let's use knitting, and oh my gosh, that's what I was supposed to be doing in life. So I don't think it's so much that revelation when you find the thing that you're supposed to be doing, but it is the process of learning. I think just the process of opening yourself up and seeing, oh, that really touched on something, and okay, that's cool. Like yoga. Oh, that really touched on something. Do I want to be a yoga instructor? No, but that touched on something. And there's you try surfing. Okay, well, that was cool. So it doesn't mean you have to be a surfer, or it doesn't mean you have to bring surfing into the workplace, but it touches on different parts of it. It activates, I think, different parts of our passion, and that I'm I think the passion comes in that learning process, that childlike, first time novice experience of, oh, that was really cool. So that's my, and I'm all for cross training. I'm a runner, but you got to change it up. Sometimes you got to do swimming. Sometimes you got to do something else, because it you just can't sustain any type of creativity when you're doing the same thing day after day, year after year.
I love the discovery process of doing something new, and then maybe along the way learning something about yourself, or even just like being able to do something and then maybe ending up being able to play half a song for after maybe 2 weeks of practicing, and then feeling great about yourself, so that you now carry this can-do attitude to other areas of your life, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I want to ask about the question of what music genre do you recommend people listening to that maybe could bring out more creativity? And I know you said that it depends on what you are creating. So, because I'm asking this question because I think maybe it's more enjoyable if you are doing housework and then you're listening to a particular type of music, or maybe like in general, I guess this person could be asking, how does my brain maybe respond better and get become more creative if I do listen to a certain type of music? Do you have any ideas about that?
Um, well, the brain, I know there's a sort of a school of thought that, put on classical music while you're studying and you'll do better. Which, it's all the same to me. In fact, I find it a little distracting. But I think, whatever we're used to in this day and age, there's a fair amount of consonance in our pop music, and that's usually what flies with people. They're not used to a lot of dissonance, and that did come up in the 20th century. We had real dissonance, and people find it irritating. And so I think there's probably a formula to what really makes you to productive or feel good. But I think that the element of creativity, to bring that in, that music doesn't make you creative. You bring an attitude into this, and we have to do the work. Like, so I have to ask myself, okay, what does this music evoke, and what am I trying to do? So that's kind of how I notated on the notes for you, that what are you doing? Like, if I'm going to go running, I don't want to listen to classical music. That'll put me to sleep. Or certain types of consonant classical music. I'll get something with a beat, with and something that really get me going. If I'm yeah, I think there's so many variables there. So I would shy away from saying any genre creates. I would just say we bring the creativity into the activity and do the work to realize, oh, what does this how does this make me feel, and what is it producing in me?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, yeah, pick the genre that sort of aligns with the activity you're trying to do and check in with yourself to see, oh, is this making me happy or is this making me feel very dramatic? And if that's the mood that you're going for, then definitely listen to that kind of music and see how you personally respond to what you like and enjoy, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, we're almost towards the end, and I have to ask a career-related question, but it's more or less of, if this person has maybe someone like you who has sort of found your career path and feel very passionate about your work, like how do you separate your work from your love of your work and feel like there's some boundaries so that you know because even when you're not at work you're thinking about your work, especially because being a business owner also of your school. So yeah, how do you decompress from work and set some boundaries to be away from work, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, that is a big question. And I guess I've experienced different things through different stages of my business. There are times when it's just simply stressful and you have to deal with it. You're gonna have to be there 7 days a week, for 3 months, and that's simply the state. Oh, I'm talking about being an entrepreneur, but if you're talking about just generally career, I do think there's similarities where you just have to learn the skill. So there's a steep learning curve when you come into a position, and so you can't, the boundaries and things. I think I'm gonna kind of think about this, but there are ways to to keep those boundaries when you're entering into a new situation. It's very hard, but I would say, give it a few months, or sometimes if you're an entrepreneur, like years, a few years, where You just gotta grin and bear it, just suck it up and do it. But definitely, if that's happening year after year and every year, something's wrong. So yes, you do need to learn to create boundaries. Um, Going into a new job, I would say state it up front. For me, as a believer, I would say, although I was not, I was on the working end of it. I was a pastor. But if church is important to you or a day of rest is important to you, say that. Say that to your boss, and you have to be willing to let it go if they say no. But at least they know where you're coming from. As an entrepreneur, I just have to make sure there are seasons that I decompress, because you can simply cannot. But there are life giving parts. Hopefully, of whatever job you're doing, there should be. I hope 50 to 70% life giving parts, or maybe you're in the wrong field, or you ought to look about toward changing your situation. Sometimes it's the relationships within the office or whatever. So I would aim toward 50 to 70%, looking at, like, let's say like a year or 2 years. You should be fairly happy, and you should have, so that even if you do think about work when it's when you're not on the clock, that it's a good thing. It's a life giving thing. So yeah, being a creative, now having my own business, I am 100% doing what I love doing, which is creating. So that's, to me, I don't even sort of dissect it and say, okay, well, don't think of creating right now, because it's just 100% life giving, to me. And I guess that would be the thing I would say to people: make sure you are creating, because that definitely, I going back to my thesis, is we are meant to create. That's one of the fulfilling things that we ought to experience in life.
Very, very, very cool. I can totally. I'm just letting it sink in, and it. I feel like I resonate with so much of what you're saying. I feel like yeah, I need to sort of really align myself with, like, what's the bigger picture or the vision that I have for myself, and think more broadly. Are the little things I'm doing kind of headed towards the bigger goal, or definitely spending the time to think about what I want to achieve as well, so that I know that I am not just doing busy work, but it's headed towards somewhere, and that it's going in the direction that I want to go in. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing all the things that you have said. And any parting words that you want to leave for us while we have 2 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my main points, I just would say that creativity is essential to life. We're called upon to create on a regular basis. We can we can be forced to create, or we can proactively create, and I would recommend proactively creating. Dealing with our problems, which requires discipline. So there is always that aspect of discipline. These skills are building blocks which can lead to creative work and problem solving, but they're not creative in and of itself. And music is one of those things, those skills and investments that create a beautiful bridge into creativity. So as a musician, I guess I'm of course want to advocate that music is a great thing to learn. But whatever you do, it's all, as long as you're growing and have room to find that, that find yourself, and learn new things. I think it's all good. It's all a part of life, and I just bless you all to do that.
Great. And do you have any current call to action or anything that you are like a big project that you're working on at your school that you want to let the audience know about?
Sure. We are offering online lessons. If anybody wants to take lessons, it's very accessible. Because of the pandemic, we've developed that quite a bit. Uh, I don't know if I can give my information or not, but you can probably get it from Katie. And we're on Clubhouse. We're having jazz in the afternoons. If you have the Clubhouse app, it's a time when we collaborate with other jazz musicians, and it's 5 o'clock Pacific time. So yeah, would love to connect with anybody that feels like a nudge from anything I said. I would love to be available to talk things through with you. If you feel like I hit on something, I'm all for releasing the creative in you.
Yeah, so you can find Carolyn at Neighborhood Music School Arcadia. If you just type in a search, you'll find it. She has an Instagram and YouTube, and reach out to us on LinkedIn if you want to message us. And so, yeah, I want to say a big thank you to Carolyn and also to the audience for being here with us. I appreciate you all so much. Please stay in touch, and I'm going to close the room. So bye for now, and the conversation's never over. I will see you again on this Chat and Learn later on. There's more exciting videos coming up. Yeah, bye everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. I'm having trouble stopping the recording, but are you